Hello, everyone, and welcome to Back to Ashes. My name is Phoenix. To the elite members of the channel, thank you so much for your love and dedicated support. I cannot thank you enough. With that being said, it is now time to go back to ashes, for once we arise from the ashes, we are a bigger, brighter, stronger, and a happier person every day. So sit back and relax, kick back, grab a snack, or tuck in and get warm, and prepare for your dose of vocal melatonin entitled True Night Shift Horror Stories. Right after this intro, there will be an ad. I'll read the first story, there will be an ad. And after that, there will be no more ads within this video. I'd always prided myself on being unflappable, the sort of person who could stare down a storm without flinching. Shadows didn't unsettle me. They were just absences of light, after all. But that illusion shattered like brittle bone during my tenure on the night shift of Glenwood Hospital. Tucked away in a sleepy town where the streets emptied by dusk, the place was a relic, a hulking edifice over a century old, its bones groaning under the weight of time. Modern wings had been grafted on like awkward prosthetics, all sterile chrome and buzzing fluorescence, but the heart of it remained the original structure. Vaulted hallways that arched like the ribs of some forgotten beast, narrow windows that stared like suspicious eyes, and walls that whispered with the subtle shifts of warped timber. I told myself the unease was just fatigue, the byproduct of 12-hour stretches in the witching hours. But deep down, I knew better. The hospital wasn't just old, it remembered. And in those late nights, it hungered to share its secrets. I'd been pulled onto the pediatric night shift about 8 months before the unraveling began. By day, the ward buzzed with the fragile chaos of childhood illness. Crayons scrawled get well cards taped to doors, the tiny echo of cartoons from tablet screens, parents hovering like ghosts themselves. But after midnight, it transformed into something hushed and hollow. The lights dimmed to a sullen amber glow, casting along fingers of shadows across the linoleum. Children slumbered in their beds, IV lines snaking like veins under thin blankets, while their guardians slumped in vinyl chairs, exhaustion carving hollows beneath their eyes. Monitors hummed a lullaby of beeps, a mechanical heartbeat syncing with the world's uneasy rhythm. It was a place of quiet desperation, where hope flickered like a candle in a draft. And then there was the corner we'd all learned to ignore, the cordoned off section, a festering appendix of the ward that had been walled away for months after the guise of repairs. Budget cuts, they said, red tape from faceless bureaucrats in distant offices, 4 derelict rooms, and a cramped storage alcove. All seemed behind a pair of double doors, reinforced with chicken wire glass that harped the world beyond into a funhouse distortion. No one went in there, not really. Housekeeping might crack the doors once in a blue moon to dump forgotten relics, rusted carts, yellowed linens, but the lock clicked shut like a final judgment each time. The air inside carried a scent of mildew and something sharper, the metallic tang of old blood, long scrubbed away. I avoided it instinctively, as if the threshold marked the edge of a grave. It started on a Tuesday, the kind of night where the clock's hands dragged like reluctant sinners. Around 2 a.m., I was hunched over charts at the nurse's station, the fluorescent hum overhead drilling into my skull. Manny, my coworker, a stocky guy with a personal 5 o'clock shadow, and a laugh that could defuse a bomb, was in the break room, rustling through vending machine spoils. The ward lay still, save for the monitor's sporadic sighs. Then it came. A soft rapping from the double doors, insistent, like knuckles on coffin wood. I froze, pen hovering mid-scrawl, convincing myself it was the building settling, the old bones creaking in the chill. But it persisted. Tap, tap, tap. 3 deliberate strikes that echoed in my chest like a heartbeat out of sync. The closed section was supposed to be a tomb, empty as a husk. No patients, no staff, just dust and decay. My pulse quickened, a traitor to my composure. I rose slowly, the chair scraping like a whisper of warning, and approached the doors. The wire glass stared back, a grid of fractured reflections. "Hello?" I called, my voice thin and swallowed by the void. Silence. Then the knocking resumed, methodical now, as if whatever waited inside was measuring my resolve. Heart thunding. I fumbled my keys, the jangle unnaturally loud in the hush. Peering through a sliver I pried open, I shone my phone's flashlight into the abyss. The beam died, a foot in, devoured by inky blackness that seemed to pulse, alive with unspoken malice. The corridor beyond exhaled a breath of stale air, damp earth, and faint rot. The perfume of neglect. No movement, no shapes. Just shadows coiling like smoke from an unseen fire. A prickle raced up my spine, cold as grave soil. I slapped the door shut, the lock snapping with finality, and retreated to my station, chalking it up to a loose pipe or a draft-rattling cart. Sensible, safe, but my hands trembled as I gripped the pen and the charts blurred under a haze of doubt. 15 minutes later, Manny ambled back, crumbs dusting his scrubs like fresh snow. I spilled the story over the rim of my coffee mug, expecting his trademark eye roll. Instead, his face tightened, chips forgotten mid-crunch. "You too, huh?" he muttered, glancing at the doors like they might lunge. A few nights back, he confessed in a low voice he'd heard it. A child's wail seeping through the barrier, high and keening, like a soul fraying at the edge. He'd pounded on the glass, shouted until his throat ached, but the crying dissolved into mocking silence. We exchanged a pact then. Next time, we face it together, steel in our spines, flashlights in hand. For the rest of that shift, the ward stayed as quiet as death itself. No more sounds clawed their way out. But in the quiet, I felt watched, eyes like pinpricks in the dark, tallying my fear. The next 2 shifts slithered by uneventful, the incident fading to a nagging itch in the back of my mind. But Friday, I'd buried it under routine. Vital checks, med pass, the endless paperwork that papered over the ward's quiet horrors. Around 3 a.m., I slipped away for rounds, the half-lit hallways stretching like veins under pale skin. Parents dozed in unnatural poses. Children curled fetal under starched sheets, their breaths shallow as secrets. Everything seemed normal. Too normal. Perhaps the air thick with an anticipation that set my teeth on edge. As I looped back, I spotted Manny at the corridor's end, beckoning with a frantic wave. His whisper slithered into my ear, faint giggling, bubbling up from the double doors like poison laughter. And the lock. He secured it himself, not an hour prior. Unlocked now, ajar like an invitation from the abyss. We stared, the weight of inevitability pressing down. Together, I breathed, and he nodded, jaw set. He eased the doors open with a creak that moaned like a dying breath, and I trailed him, phone lights slicing the gloom. Dust motes danced in the beam like spectral fireflies, the air plunging to a bone-deep chill that raised hackles on my arms. Not just cold, but wrong, as if the warmth had been leached away by invisible mouths. We crept past the first two rooms, husks of peeling wallpaper curling like flayed skin, windows taped over with yellowed plastic that fluttered faintly, though no breeze stirred. Manny's lights with the corners, and there, huddled in shadow, a child's wheelchair. Small, skeletal, its frame gleaming unnaturally, pristine amid the ruin. I blinked, certain it hadn't been there before. A relic or something placed. The giggle floated again, playful yet laced with malice, echoing from the storage alcove at the hull's terminus. It tugged at memories I didn't own, half-remembered nightmares of games gone wrong, where laughter masked screams. I choked on the air, thick now with the scent of talcum and faint, sickly sweet decay. "Who's there?" Manny hissed, voice cracking like thin ice. We pressed on, boots whispering over grit, the nook unfolding. Battered carts slumped like slain beasts, shelves sagging under the burden of forgotten crates. The closet door yawned open, a black maw. Manny nudged it wider, light probing the shelves, boxes of crusted syringes, linens brittle as parchment. Nothing stirred, except, dead center on the floor, a single shoe. A tiny black Mary Jane, glossy as obsidian, unscuffed by time or dread, brand new, mocking. Manny scooped it up, turning it in the light. The label inside gleamed, pristine as a lie. We knew every child on the floor, their charts etched into our minds like scars. None matched this relic. Then it came, a gust, impossible in the sealed tomb, whipping through the closet like the exhalation of a predator. It carried a whisper of frost, coiling around my ankles, up my spine, tasting my warmth. Manny yelped, the shoe tumbling from his grip, clattering like a dropped bone. Nausea roiled in my gut, hot and sour. We backed away, eyes wide, the alcove seeming to contract, walls leaning in with conspiratorial hunger. Enough. We fled, double locking the doors with hands that shook like aspen leaves, the click echoing as a hollow vowel. That night, in my apartment's suffocating quiet, sleep evaded me. Rationality clawed for purchase. Old equipment, housekeeping's oversight, tricks of acoustics in the drafty halls. But the giggle lingered in my ears, a siren's call laced with rot. The chill wasn't weather, it was absence, a void where something vital had been devoured. And the shoe, small, waiting, as if it yearned for a foot to fill it, to drag its owner back into the dark. The disturbances didn't fade. They festered. Over the next nights, Manny and I skirted that poison corner, but the sounds pursued us. Soft footfalls, pattered like rain on a grave. Snatches of laughter that slithered under doors, always just beyond sight. We threw ourselves into duties, adjusting drips that beat it like tears, soothing fevered whimpers that mirrored our own unease. Ignorance is armor, we hoped, but the ward rebelled. One shift, the monitors in a corner room convulsed, screens flickering with static snow, vitals spiking into gibberish, machines resetting to factory voids, as if scrubbed clean by unseen hands. Hours lost recalibrating, the air humming with unspoken dread. Tech support blamed the antique wiring, surges from the building's buried veins. Manny shot me a look across the station, his eyes shadowed. It's waking up. I nodded, the word entity curdling, unspoken, on my tongue. Not ghost, but something hungrier. A parasite, fattened on the ward's legacy of loss. Then the father cornered me, wide-eyed in the dim hall, his boy pale and stitched from surgery. You got toys out here? Balls rolling on their own? A small rubber sphere, red as fresh blood, had trundled past his door, unaided, banished into shadow. I lied smoothly. No toys in the corridors, nothing free roaming. But his fear mirrored mine, a contagion spreading. That night we plotted our return. Manny arrived armed, a bulking maglite, its beam a defiant lance. Saturday, midnight, patient stable, the on-call doc lost to slumber in his den. The ward slumbered too, but uneasily, as if holding its breath for the ritual to come. The double doors, unlocked again, yawning like a wound reopened. Emergency signs bled faint crimson glows into the corridor, painting walls in hellish hues. First room, stretchers like ossuary slabs, a lamb decapitated on the floor, paint sloughing in leprous flakes. No footprints, marred the dust, save ours now damning. Second, bed frame, rusted to ruin. Curtain rod, a fallen sword. Walls weeping brown stains that could be water, or worse. So far, so good, I murmured, voice a thread. Third room. Manny halted, beam quivering. The wheelchair squatted central, dust swirling in frantic eddies, as if disturbed seconds prior. A vortex of motes dancing to an unheard dirge. I stepped in, throat tight. The vinyl seat cradled the cushion, and atop it, the Mary Jane. Not where we'd abandoned it. Placed, waiting, like an offering to whatever god lurked in the plaster cracks. Manny cursed, low and guttural. Then, scratching. Nails on wood, deliberate, flaying the exposed lath of the far wall. Frantic burrowing, the beam pinned it, chipped plaster, dust like bone meal. But something skittered from the periphery. Small, hunched, a blur of limb and shadow, vanishing through the fourth door with rodent swiftness. "Hey!" we bellowed in unison, primal fear propelling us afterwards. The final room swallowed us, blacker than pitch, boarded window like a sealed sepulchre. Manny's light stuttered, winked out, batteries fresh as dawn, now dead as doornails. Mine alone, feeble, clawed at corners. IV stand toppled like a crucifixion cross. A lone watercolor askew, a child's scrawl of meadows and sun, Colors faded to sickly pallor, as if the joy had been bled out. Giggling again, feather light threading the stillness. Not sound, but sensation. A presence coiling around us like smoke from a pyre. Intimate and invasive. It knew us, tasted our dread. The painting crashed down, frames splintering like snapped femurs. I jolted, heart slamming. Manny's scream pierced high, boyish in terror. We whirled. Nothing. Empty air. Mocking, I stooped for the canvas, fingers brushing paper that felt warm, fevered. Manny's voice cracked. "We leave. Now." No argument. We bolted past the alcove's shoe-gaping mouth, the wheelchair's silent vigil. Through doors we triple-locked, with prayers unspoken. Back at the station we collapsed, breaths ragged, the wards silent, now a roar. Dawn brought reports, trespasser concerns, anomalous noises, facts stripped bare. No Spectre's name. Days later, a crew materialized, grumbling that they gutted the section, hauling relics into daylight like exhuming the damned. Manny texted relief. Cleared, sealed, eternal. I transferred that week to a day shift in a newer wing, fluorescent bright and soulless. Freedom, or so I thought. But a month on, his message chilled. Found nothing but junk, but the air, it watched them leave. I quit soon after, fleeing to a clinic across town, where laughter rings true and shadows stay put. Yet, in quiet moments, midnight commutes, empty rooms, I hear it still, that giggle, burrowing into my skull, a hook of ice. I won't claim knowledge of Glenwood's curse, but I feel it. That ward cradles more sickness. It hoards the unfortunate. The tiny forms wheeled away not to playgrounds, but oblivion. Their pain doesn't dissipate. It accretes. A conscious miasma, giggling in the walls, scuttling in the vents, hungry for company. And on still nights, when the wind mimics footsteps, I wonder, did I lock that door tight enough? Or does it remember my scent, waiting for the knock that calls me home? The air in that old grocery store always carried a faint rot, like the breath of something buried too long under the floorboards. It was a family-run relic, squeezed into the sagging ribs of our town's forgotten quarter. A place where the streets once pulsed with life, back when folks believed in progress and parades. But now, it just whispered of abandonment. The neon sign out front flickered like a dying pulse, buzzing through the night as if pleading for one more customer to notice. We stayed open 24 hours, a stubborn ritual against the creeping dark. But by the time I started slinging cigarettes and loose change behind the register, the nights were graves. Foot traffic? A joke. Just shadows of the sleepless, shuffling in for milk or menthols, their eyes hollowed out by whatever demons kept them from their beds. Me, Carter, the stock boy, and Della on manager duty. That was the crew, thin as the pickings. Della lurked in the back office most nights, her voice crackling over the intercom like a warning from the void. Carter stalked the shelves with the mechanical rhythm of a man who'd long ago surrendered to boredom. And I wiped counters until they gleamed unnaturally, restocked the candy bars in neat, futile rows. And when the fluorescent hum was the only company, I'd still glances at my phone, scrolling through lives that felt 1,000 miles from the fluorescent purgatory. Autumn slithered in that year, like a thief in the fog, bringing crates of produce from some forgotten orchard on the town's edge. Apples bruised with secrets, pumpkins swollen and vain like bloated hearts, squash twisted into shapes that mocked the natural world. The produce manager, a gaunt specter named Earl, who smelled of damp earth and regret, stacked all into this towering monstrosity right by the front door. A narrow spire of wicker baskets and wooden crates, precarious as a house of cards built by mad hands, leaning just enough to suggest it hungered for collapse. I eyed it, every shift, my gut twisting with the certainty that one gust from the perpetual rattling vents would send it crashing down in an avalanche of pulp and rind. But it didn't. It held. Defiant, unnatural, as if something propped it up from the shadows, invisible fingers cradling the weight. The disturbances started subtle, like the first itch of something burrowing under your skin. A couple nights in, I'd clocked in and find the display violated. Squash tumbled like severed limbs, pumpkins nudged askew as if by a hesitant touch, apples scattered in lazy arcs that traced no human path. I'd sweep them up, the sticky residue clinging to my palms like accusations, and corner Carter in the stockroom. "Are you messing with it? Some prank to kill the hours?" He'd laugh, that hollow bark echoing off the metal shelves, his eyes flicking away too quickly. "Nah, man, not me. Probably kids bored out of their skulls." Della, when I dragged the mess to her attention, waved it off with a sigh that carried the weight of too many unpaid bills. "Teens. Always the damn teens. This town's full of them, sulking like rats." But the security cam's grating relics, mounted high like unblinking eyes, showed nothing. No blurred figures darting across the frame, no doors creaking open in the dead hours. And customers? I dribble. How does a prankster tamper without a whisper, without the scuff of shoe on tile? I started listening harder then, the store's silence pressing in like a held breath. At night, when the clock bled past midnight, I'd swear I heard it, a faint rustle, like dry leaves skittering across bone. It was a Tuesday when the veil thinned, around 1:30 a.m., the kind of hour where time unravels and the world feels like it's unraveling with it. Carter was on break, nursing a smoke out back where the dumpsters overflowed with the store's leaves. Della holed up in her office, the glow of her computer screen seeping under the door like poison light. Outside, a thunderstorm clawed at the sky. Lightning forked through the blackness to etch the aisles in stark white relief. Shelves like the bars of a cage, registers like altars to forgotten gods. The storm was a tomb, empty, save for the hum of the coolers and the distant patter of rain on the roof. Then it came, a soft scuffle, deliberate and intimate, like feet dragging through unseen silt. My heart stuttered, a cold wire twisting in my chest. I leaned over to the register, the counter's edge biting into my palms, peering into the gloom. There, a flicker of motion, a silhouette slipping between the aisles like smoke given form. drawn inexorably to the produce tower. "Hey!" My voice cracked out, sharper than I meant, swallowed by the thunder's growl. No answer. Just that persistent shuffle, inching closer, teasing the edge of hearing. I fumbled for the overhead switch, flooding the corner with harsh fluorescent that banished shadows, but birthed new horrors. There, crouched amid the pumpkins like a supplement at some profane shrine, it waited, tall, even in its hunch, unnaturally so, as if its spine had been forged too long for this world. Drab rags clung to its frame, filthy and frayed, hanging like shed skin from a frame that seemed carved from wire and want. The face? God, the face lurked partially behind a sagging pumpkin. But those eyes, wide, unblinking orbs that caught the light and held it, glinting with a feral gleam that wasn't reflection but recognition. Recognition of me, perhaps, or of the fragile barrier between us. It uncoiled then, a spasm of motion that scattered pumpkins in a chaotic cascade, their hollow thuds echoing like distant heartbeats. I dropped behind the register, breath ragged, pulse hammering against my ribs as if trying to escape. When I dared peered out, it was gone, vanished into the store's labyrinthian guts. The tower sagged, half collapsed, an apple spinning lazy circles on the tile like a hypnotic ward. I crept forward, my flashlight beam slicing the air, sweeping aisles that stretched into infinity. Empty. Always empty. Della burst from the back, her face pale under the makeup she never bothered to fix at night, demanding the story in a voice edged with irritation, masking fear. I stammered it out. The shape, the eyes, the unnatural stillness. She scanned the wreckage, lips thinning. Homeless guy, probably. Rain like this, they'd do anything for cover. But the front doors were locked tight, chains rattling like laughter when we tugged them. The back? We prowled the loading docks, the bathrooms with their flickering bulbs and mildew reek, every shallowed corner a potential maw. Nothing. Zilch. We trudged back to our posts, the air thicker now, laced with a phantom scent of wet earth and something sharper. Decay, perhaps, or the tang of blood long dried. That night, I jumped at every creak, every drip, from the perpetually leaking roof, convinced the dark between shelves nursed eyes that watched without blinking. A week crawled by, each shift a tightening noose. The incident faded to a blur under my skin, an itch I couldn't scratch, dismissed into daylight as fevered nerves. But the store remembered. Whispers of disturbance lingered. A candy wrapper crumpled in a corner it had no business being. A can of soup teetering on the edge of a shelf like it balanced on the brink of confession. I told myself it was nothing, but my dreams filled with that glint, those eyes peering from the cracks in my skull. Then came the night Carter called out sick, his voice on the phone a wheeze of phlegm and excuses. Just me and Della again. The store a cavern under midnight's weight. Rain lashed the windows like accusatory fingers, drumming a rhythm that mocked my solitude. A lone customer, a woman in a sodden coat, her face a mask of quiet desperation, bought her six-pack and fled into the storm, leaving the air colder and heavier. I busied myself with the candy racks, fingers trembling as I aligned the garish wrappers. When it started, a metallic clatter from the back, near the deli, a spoon against a tray or worse, nails scraping steel. I froze, the sound burrowing into my marrow. "Della?" My call was a whisper, barely breaching the aisles. "What?" Her reply snapped from the office, laced with annoyance. Not her. Heart thudding like a trapped animal, I edged toward the deli, the tile cold underfoot, each step echoing my dread. Between the shelves, a puddle gleamed. Roof leak, sure, but darker than before, edged with an oily sheen that caught the light wrong. And from its heart, footprints unfurled, long, narrow, splayed like the tracks of something amphibious, webbed by shadow and wet with purpose. They trailed away toward the cooler. I followed, breath shallow, the air thickening with a chill that seeped from the walls themselves. There, behind the deli's open door, a slab of smoked glass fogged with frost. It lurked. Taller now, or perhaps less inclined to cower, its head swiveling with a creak like rusted hinges. Those eyes again, crazed and luminous, pinning me with a gaze that stripped away flesh to bone. My limbs locked, a scream dying in my throat as details etched themselves into nightmare. Arms like branches stripped bare, draped in rags that whispered of grave soil. Hands. Oh, those hands. Elongated talons curled at impossible angles. Fingers spindly and jointed wrong, as if pieced from the limbs of things that crawled the underbelly of the world. Its posture was a violation, a perpetual cringe born of concealment or curse. Shoulders hunched as if bearing the weight of unseen things. Sir, you can't," the words choked out, feeble against the void. No response, just a tilt of the head, appraising, amused. It melted behind the cooler, a ripple in the dark. Against every screaming instinct, I advanced, drawn like a moth to the flame of my own ruin. A rattle from the corner, jars shifting, lids popping like eyes winking. And then blackness. The power died, not with a bang but a sigh, the storm's wrath claiming the grid as tribute. Emergency lights bloomed, faint by the entrance, lighting stitching the aisles in erratic silver. Footsteps erupted, heavy, thudding, far too ponderous from that emaciated silhouette, shaking the floor like the tread of something ancient, roused from slumber. Glass shattered somewhere deep in the store, a crystalline scream that mirrored my own stifled terror. I flailed for the flashlight beam, wild as a cornered beast, carving frantic arcs through the murk. Lightning obliged, a strobing revelation, the thing bounding toward the back, exit on limbs that bent backward at the knees, joints popping like gunfire. Half human? No. Worse, a mockery, skin stretched taut over bones that whispered of the primordial ooze, muscles coiling in ways that defied the architect of flesh. It was gone before the afterimage faded, swallowed by the loading dock's maul. Della emerged, cursing the blackout, her flashlight a twin to mine as we coaxed the generator to life with fumbling hands. Jars lay in ruin, ham slices curled like pale tongues on the floor, and those footprints, meandering brackish trails to the back door, which yawned ajar like a conspirator's grin. We summoned the cops. Their rain-slicked boots trampled the perimeter, voices gruff with skepticism. "Lock it up tight, folks. Storm's bringing out the weirdos." But Della's eyes met mine in the aftermath, wide with the same creeping certainty. This wasn't a man. It was a breach. Something slithering through the cracks of our world. The nights that followed were a slow unraveling. Petty hauntings accumulated like debts. A loaf of bread unpending in the bakery aisle, its innards spilling like exposed viscera. A carton of eggs cracked open, yolks pulling in obscene Rorschachs. Muddy smears on the linoleum, faint as veins under skin, vanishing by morning's indifferent light. Carter returned, chuckling about gremlins in the walls, but his jokes rang false. His glance darting to the shadows when he thought I wasn't looking. He'd stuck the produce with hurried hands, never lingering by that cursed tower, now reinforced by twine that seemed to mock our fragility. The end came of my shift, 4 a.m., the hour when the veil between wake and oblivion frays to threads. Della had fled early, failed by one of her migraines, cluster headaches that left her weeping in the break room, poor wraith of a woman. And Carter was absent again. Plague or pretext, who could say? The store was decrepit. Rain, a ceaseless dirge, dripping from the eaves, like tears from a weeping sky. I hunched over the magazines by the entrance, aligning glossy lies and orderly facades, when the motion lights in aisle 7 ignited. A soft click, then bloomed of pallid glow. I hadn't moved. No one had entered. My hands shook as I forced calm, telling myself it was the storm's sabotage, wiring frayed as my nerves. But dread coiled tighter, a serpent in my gut. I had to investigate. Protocol, or perhaps the masochistic pull of the unknown. Rounding the corner, aisle 7 yawned empty. Canned goods centennial in a half light, labels peeling like scabs. Then aisle 8 flickered alive, the sensor's betrayal pulling me deeper. The air grew fetid, laced with ozone and something primal. Moss, perhaps, or the reek of drowned things. Aisle 9 next. A chain of summons dragged me into the heart of the beast. "Who's there?" My voice echoed, frail against the void. Silence answered, broken only by a drip. Slow, viscous, pooling on the tile. I wheeled, beam catching a stain. Water, but fouled, brackish as bile, swirling with fleets that might have been silt or scales. Retreat seemed salvation, but folly pulled me to the front, to the produce where it began. The display sagged under the night's toll. Pumpkins withered, centennials. Lettuce limp as forgotten flesh. Yet the air, it throbbed with wet soil, rich and cloying, as if the earth itself had exhaled into the store. Mud veined the floor, subtle tendrils snaking from the tower's base. And there, crouched low, a hump of shadow just beyond the baskets, breathing shallow and patient. It rose then, unfolding into a blasphemous bloom that spanned 2 heartbeats. Taller than a man, taller than reason. Its crown brushing the hanging signs, rags parting to reveal limbs like twisted roots, glistening with an inner dew that wasn't sweat but secretion. Those eyes locked onto mine, not with hunger but with a cold, appraising sorrow, As if it pitied the meat puppet I was, horror detonated in my veins. I spun, legs churning in blind flight, a scream ripping from depths I didn't know I possessed. The aisles blurred, a gauntlet of shelving, claws snagging my shirt. The manager's office loomed. Sanctuary, lockable door, phone to summon aid. But as my fingers grazed the knob, the back exit slammed, a thunderclap of finality, change rattling like mocking applause. It had passed me. In the same space of my scream, it had lanced by, a blur of wrongness. Fleet as thought, slipping the back door before I could draw breath. Gone. Into the rain-lashed night, back to whatever burrow it claimed, in the orchard's throats or the river's sunken bones. I barricaded myself in the office, back wedged against the desk, flashlight clutched like a crucifix, waiting for dawn's mercy. The store groaned around me, settling into its secrets. I never returned. No call, no show. Just ghosts in my wake. Management's voicemails piled like indictments. But I let them rot unheard. To this day, sleep eludes me in these small hours. The rain a summons I dread answering. Whatever it wasn't born of man. Something primordial, exiled to the margins, gazing through our glass veils at the bounty we hoard. When the world quiets, when the lights dim and the watchers falter, it comes. Not for shelter, not for scraps, but to remind us that the dark beneath the floorboards hungers still, patient as the grave. And one night, it will rise to claim its due. I was 17 when I started slinging grease at the fluorescent-lit tomb of a fast food joint, the kind of place where dreams go to congeal under the heat lamps. It wasn't glamour, it was survival, a greasy lifestyle for gas money and the fleeting haze of weekend highs. The days bled into one another in a ritual of monotony. The fryer's ceaseless drone, like a swarm of distant insects, burrowing into your skull. The soda machine's venomous hiss spitting out carbonated lies. The drive-through windows cracking through the speaker like fractured whispers from the void. We'd wrap burgers in wax paper shrouds, serve them with a mechanical smile, and repeat into the world outside, blurred into irrelevance. My crew kept the rot at bay, mostly. Kids like me, all sharp edges and borrowed bravado, treated barbs all the line like lifelines. We'd sculpt obscene shapes from the discarded nuggets, twisted birds with beady fury eyes that mocked our captivity, and invent games that danced on the knife's edge of Dean's patience. After hours, when the last customer slunk away, we'd crank the speakers until the bass throbbed like a hidden pulse, twirling through the steam-slicked floors, scrubbing away the night's sins as if we could wash the stain from our souls. Dean, our manager, was the shadow that made it bearable. Barely 25 with a lazy grin that hid something sharper, he played the indulgent older brother, rules etched into invisible ink. No chaos under the gaze of the living, no shirking the ritual cleansing, but crossed the line too far and his eyes would flicker, just once, with a hunger that made the air taste metallic. Nights blurred into a tapestry of the mundane, threaded with the occasional glitch, a customer with eyes too hollow, a prank call that lingered like bad breath. But there was one shift, one Saturday that clawed its way into the marrow of me, refusing to fade. Even now, as I navigate the empty veins of midnight halls, it stirs in the rear view, a passenger I cannot evict. I tell myself it's embellished, a fever dream spun from exhaustion. But the chill that grips my spine knows better. It was real, and it hungered. Saturdays were always a frenzy. A flood of hollow-eyed families devoured their regrets. Packs of teenagers haunting the dining area like ghosts, too young to haunt properly. The drive-thru coiling out into the night like a serpent's tail. That night, though, the chaos festered. 2 called out, leaving us skeletal. Me, 3 friends, and the new girl. A wisp of silence with eyes that darted like prey. Dean, the lone one amongst us girls, paced the line with fraying calm, his jaw a taut wire as the phone shrilled with phantom orders. By 10, the tide ebbed, leaving us husks in the wreckage. 11 brought fragile reprieve. The dining room a graveyard of crumpled trays, drive-through silent as the dead. Dean flipped the sign to closed, the lock clicking like a predator's teeth snapping shut. He leaned against the counter, shadows pooling under his eyes, and murmured, "Good work, shadows. 5 minutes, then we seal the tomb." We scattered like roaches to the dim light, sodas fizzing like suppressed screams, pilfered fryers cooling to bitter ash. Music slithered low from the speakers, a dirge masquerading as rhythm, and the new girl cracked a porcelain smile at my friend's grotesque jig. Relief bloomed, thin and treacherous, until the landline keened, a scalpel through the flesh of our ease. I groaned at the clock's accusatory glow. Who summons the dead this late? Dean scooped it up, his drawl unraveling. "Hello." The word hung, then twisted, his gaze skittering across us, pupils swallowing the light, face draining to the hue of spoiled milk. "Yeah, who is this?" A pause, endless as the abyss. His knuckles bleached around the receiver, veins like roots clawing through soil. "Look, man, I don't know what game." Another silence, longer, thicker, his shoulders hunched as if bearing an unseen weight, jaw grinding like stones in a mill when he slammed it down. The cradle shuddered. "What the hell was that?" I ventured, voice a threadbare veil over dread. "Nothing," he rasped, but his eyes betrayed him, flicking to the door, the windows, the voids beyond. He lunged for the lock, testing it with fingers that trembled faintly, as if the metal might betray us. Just some creep. A beat, then quieter, laced with rot. "Says he knows it's just girls here tonight. Says he's been watching." The air turned to tar. Laughter choked in our throats. The music now a mocking wail. Too loud, too alive in the face of what prowled outside. My friend edged to the window, breath fogging the glass like a dying exhale. "Anyone out there?" Dean's voice cracked like brittle bone. She shook her head, but the world dissolved, her eyes lingering on the black beyond, the lot's jaundiced lamps. "Probably some asshole prank," Dean muttered, but conviction bled from it like pus from a wound. "I'll call the cops, just stay sharp." He vanished into the office, a silhouette swallowed by gloom, leaving us adrift in the thickening fog of unease. We clustered, moths to a faltering frame, gazes snagging on every pane, every silver of night. The shadows outside deepened, coiling like smoke from a fresh grave, whispering promises of eyes in the dark. Dean's absence stretched, the restaurant's breath growing labored, the fryer's hum a labored rasp, the counter slick with phantom sweat. I hovered by the condiments, packets rattling in my grip like tiny bones, but my vigil was on the glass, the lot a barren sea under merciless light, empty yet gravid, as if the asphalt hid teeth beneath. When Dean emerged, his face was a mask of carved stone, phone in one fist, a baseball bat in the other, its wood scarred, veined with old blood I swore I could smell, unearthed from some forgotten crypt in his office. A nervous titter escaped one of us. Planning on a home run on the creep? His gaze pinned her, cold as a blade's edge. Planning to bury him before he touches a hair on you? The words landed like grave dirt, silencing us. Fear bloomed, a living vine throttling the room, squeezing breath from lungs. We feigned closure, wiping surfaces that gleamed like polished bones, sweeping floors that echoed our pulse. But every creak was a footfall, every hum a growl from the walls. Then, the bang. It erupted from the drive-thru, a thunderclap of flesh and unyielding glass, so visceral I tasted copper, the ketchup packets spilling like spilled entrails. We froze, a tableau of prayer. What? A whisper died as another struck, harder, followed by a scrape. Nails, deliberate, raking the pain like a lover's threat, etching invisible sigils of intent. Heart hammering talons against ribs, I whirled to the window. Empty, save the kitchen's glare mocking back. Dave surged forward, bat a scythe in his grip. Stay, he snarled, yanking blinds down in a cascade of dust-filled slats, the lock snapping like a trap's jaw. Don't see shit. Maybe a branch or a bird. A bird. In the witching hour's maw, we knew the lie for what it was, hollow as a predator's promise. We pressed together as he prowled the perimeter, bat tracing shadows like a divining rod for evil. Think it's him? Sarah breathed, voice a cobweb thread. Dean's silence was answer enough, his eyes devouring the night. I fixated on the front door, willing the stillness to hold, but the lot mocked us. Too still, too watchful, as if the darkness inhaled, patient for our slip. The phone screamed again, a fresh wound in the quiet. Dean seized it, still in his throat. Who the fuck is this? What do you want? Silence stretched, taut as flayed skin. His face crumpled inward, a husk. When he cradled it, his hands quaked, betraying the fortress. Same voice, he whispered, as if naming it summoned more. Says he's still here, real close, can see the fear in our eyes. Sarah shattered. I'm gone. Fuck the job. Together, Dean cut. Iron and rot. Or we all bleed. We nodded, ensnared by the logic of the hunted. He retreated to summon aid, abandoning us to the kitchen's bowels, farthest from the glass-veined windows. Sounds conspired against us. Fryer's venomous sigh. Highway's distant dirge. I scoured counters, a futile ward, when the shadow bloomed at the back door. Faint, insidious. a silhouette etched in the threshold's gloom, pulsing like a tremor. Trick of the light, I thought to myself. But it shifted, deliberate, and eyes bloomed in the pallor. A face moon-white, cheeks hollowed by unseen famines, sockets brimming with abysmal ink that drank the lamplight. It pressed closer, breath fogging the pain in the spectral blooms, lips parting on a silent invocation. My scream tore free, raw as flayed vocal cords. Footsteps thundered, friends materializing like specters. Dean exploding from the office, bat aloft. Eyes feral moons. What? The door, I choked, fingers stabbing the void. Face. Daryl barreled past, a storm of fury, flinging the door wide to the knight's gullet. Dean, Sarah wailed. But he was gone, swallowed by the corner's crook. The portal yawned, an invitation to oblivion, silence swelling until it crushed. We stared into the maw, seconds elongating to eternities, the cold seeping in like grave chill. He returned, a ghost-faced himself, slamming it shut, bolt grinding home. Nothing. Gone. But his voice frayed at the edges. I saw. I know, he snapped, softer now, a confession. But he's dust for now. Reassurance curdled in our throats. We clung, a knot of trembling limbs. Time a slow poison until blue and red veins pulsed into the lot. Cops, saviors in vinyl skins, eyes sweeping our cage. Dean spilled the venom to them in hushed torrents, then nodded, grim reapers charting the wound. Then prowled the perimeter. It didn't take long to unearth him from behind the dumpster's rusted flank, where the refuse festered like his thoughts. My knees buckled, the world tilting. Younger than the nightmare suggested. Early 20s, maybe. A bloated specter with hair, a wild corona of neglect. Matted as if woven from shadows. Skin the color of drowned flesh. Eyes skittering like rats in a flood. Never alighting. Always questing for the next fracture. Coatless in the bite of autumn. Clad in a shirt crusted with old feasts. Our feasts? And jeans stiff with secrets. Cuffed. He heaved. Chest a bellows stoking some inner inferno. Recognition slithered through me, cold as grave silt. He'd haunted us before, weeks prior, a fixture at the counter, menu his grimoire, gaze devouring the board as if spelling curses. His order, a mumble from the depths, inaudible, dismissed as the awkwardness of the damned. By now, retrofitted with hindsight's blade, it reeked of prelude, the quiet calculus of a hunter mapping his kill. He's been orbiting us, Dean breathed, as we pressed to the window, voyeurs to our own salvation. Weeks, clocking the veins, the weak points. The thought wormed deep. Him, a wraith in the gloom, cataloging our laughters, the sway of our steps, sketching nooses from afar. An officer returned, face hewn from storm clouds. In irons now, clams up like a corpse, but we'll carve the truth at the station. Anyone know this thing? Dean's nod was a dirge. Customer, repeat. Scribble of judgment in the notebook. Statements, then you're ghosts, but watch the mirrors. oddities linger. Oddities. The word mocked a jest from the abyss after this unraveling. We spat our tails in haste. The restaurant now a husk of betrayal. Counters that had borne his gaze, floors and echoed his phantom tread. Locking out felt profane. The night air a slap of raw awakening. The lot, barren but for the cruiser's strobing wounds. Him, already entombed in the squad's belly. Face smashed into the glass like a supplicant's plea. I shunned his stare, but it burrowed, a brand on my nape as I fled to my car. Homeward, a vigilant silence, music forsaken lest its lure the hounds. Headlights in the mirror birthed phantoms, pursuers with his eyes, and the passenger seat yawned empty yet occupied. A silhouette in peripheral rot. Driveway sanctuary mocked. I quaked through the night, locks futile wards against the itch of observation, blinds drawn on a world that now leered. Days later, Dean's call. Charges woven from trespass and torment's thread. Weeks of siege. He'd confessed in fragments, lurking in the lot's eaves, devouring us through glass. His car yielded the relic, a notebook, pages gravid with bile, our names inked like incantations, schedules dissected to the pulse, attire chronicled with a voyeur's lust, laughter notated as fractures to exploit, sketches of the lair, brutal and precise, X's scarring doors and vents like ritual marks, blueprints for ingress, for the coal. Planning a harvest, Dean intoned, voice eroded. Something biblical in its ugliness. I fled the place, and the counter's ghost pressing like a thumb on windpipe. Dean's mercy. No chains, just a murmur. Guard your throat, and severance. Years carve their scars, but that night festers. A palm's wet smack on the drive-thru's vein. The door's shadow birthing his famine-eyed leer. Those skittering orbs promising devouring. The notebook's haunts, deepest. X's as harbingers. Our chance interception, a fluke in the cosmetic jet. And if the lock hadn't yielded, what if he'd slipped a noose, herded us to silence, doors barred on our screams? I've migrated. New dens, new masks. But closure's a lie. Late shifts end with that prickle. The nape's whisper of breath too close. I pivot to voids, awaiting his pallid bloom under street lamps' sickly halo. He's caged, flesh and bone, yet the gaze endures. A specter's legacy, coiling eternal in the dark. And in the quiet, I wonder, how many like him still circle, unseen, etching their maps? And that, dear listeners, brings a close to these true Nightshift horror stories. First, I would like to give acknowledgement to the rest of the members of BackToAshes. I can't thank you all enough for your continuous dedication to this channel. And as I always like to say, without you, I wouldn't have a voice, and there would not be a channel. I'd be sitting here speaking to the void. Thank you so much. If you are new to the channel and you like what you have heard, please consider giving this video a like, a comment, and a share. If you would like to join the family of BackToAshes, why not go ahead and hit subscribe as well, and set your notification bell to all. That way you'll know every time I upload a video. If you are sleeping, I hope Slumberland is treating you comfortably. If you're awake, I hope you've enjoyed these selections. Until next time, Please stay vigilant and please take care of yourselves. I'll be reading to you soon. Have yourselves a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening. Peace, love, and light to you all.